He is a writer for Complex, specializing in sneaker culture. We welcome John Gotty onto Hoopsology. How's it going, John?
Hey, how's it going, guys? Glad to be here. Glad to be a guest on the show.
So, John, we had Jock Slade on the show last week. He's another expert in the sneaker culture, and this is something that I feel is underrepresented just in basketball overall. So, just as it's giving you some knowledge, just Matt and I, we're kind of novices in kind of the sneaker culture, trying to learn more just about this subgenre within this basketball as a whole. So we wanted to pick your brains. So we just wanted to start with yourself in terms of when you first fell in love with sneakers, like your first pair, and why you think what really got you interested in this.
Oh, wow. You're going to make me show my age. I'll just say that I was old enough to have the original Jordan 4s as a kid. And I mean, like an elementary school kid, I had the original Jordan 4s. If that gives you any idea of kind of where it started at for me. I'm 44 years old. So it started, and I guess that was maybe second or third grade for me. And then maybe
Mm-hmm.
by fourth grade, fifth grade, like I had an older cousin um, who kind of got me started, like truly interested in shoes, like maybe taking care of my shoes, cleaning them, making me aware of the different styles and everything like that. Like I always say that that cousin in fourth grade was the one who got me started. I was in fourth, he was in 11th grade, so he was a high school junior. And so he was sitting there just telling young me, and I'm sitting there fascinated. But he was doing that with like music, uh, shoes, everything, just really bringing me up to speed on how the world worked. And it probably started somewhere off in there, and I've been a fan ever since.
And once you got those shoes, what did it mean to you in terms of like seeing how to relate to watching the athletes like on television, and then moving on as you got older? How did your fascination with sneakers evolve from there?
They well, when you think about them in relation to basketball, it wasn't necessarily seeing them on the screen. I can remember being a young kid again in elementary and junior high school, and it would be the older guys wearing them, and that was the big fascination then. Like I can distinctly remember this guy named Greg playing on the middle school team, the junior high team, and he had the Jordan threes. And I mean, Greg was just an absolute hooper. And I guess if he was in, say, ninth grade, my sister was in eighth, so I was probably in fifth, say. And I can remember Greg, wearing the wristband on his forearm, sort of like Mike did at the time, and he had on the threes. He was just a dope hooper. So looking up to those older kids and noticing how they carried themselves, like yo, you always want to be like those guys. So that was probably an even bigger influence than the screen ever was, to be honest with you.
Got it. And so, in terms of now, and NBA athletes in particularly, can you kind of put in the context what does it mean for a senior athlete, such as like Paul George, or even like for instance we all know about LeBron and other top NBA players like Steph Curry to get their own signature shoe, because I think for like common NBA fans they kind of see it as like a common occurrence, but it's actually somewhat of kind of a rarity. Like not every NBA player has a signature shoe. So can you kind of put in the context what does that mean for a NBA player to finally get their own shoe?
I think when you think about it in terms of like the right now, it's still one of those things that guys come into the league wanting because it's part of like their dream. First I want to make it to the NBA, and then when I get there, I want to have my own signature shoe. I want to have kids wearing my shoe and trying to emulate me and trying to be me when they're on the court or in the backyard or whatever. So it still got that certain allure to it in that sense for the players. But I almost think that, in the context of right now, like I don't know how much signature shoes even matter. I was actually having a conversation with some friends the other day, and it's like when I go out and I watch these kids, because my son is 15, he plays AAU ball, so of course, in normal circumstances, we're traveling. My wife also coaches, a girls team, and she's in EYBL. So I'm
Mhm.
constantly watching these kids on those levels, on the amateur level. And those kids, like, yeah, they want to wear those shoes, but as soon as the game is over, they're slipping on some Crocs, some slides, or some Vans or something other like that. Like they don't really, they're not as fascinated as we once were. So I almost think that when you think in terms of like those signature shoes, yeah, it means a lot to the players, but I think the general public is almost like unaware of them. Like you can't recreate Mike and Kobe, and that's why I think you see a lot of the LeBron styles don't really translate to off the court, or you're not really seeing a lot of people wearing Paul Georges or Kyrie's or Curry's off of the court. Now on the court, yeah, those are the brands you're looking at, the names you're looking at. Off the court, I don't know if those signature styles translate like Jordan once did.
John, do you think that has anything to do with like relatability to the players? Like, one thing that I've heard people mention is, they'll kind of buy signature shoes kind of based on what their personal game is like. So obviously not many of us are, 6'8", 250 plus pounds and super fast and versatile like a LeBron James. Do you think that maybe some of that hesitancy to wear LeBrons off the court has to do with that? Like maybe it's a relatability thing, or is it just simply kind of a change in pop culture?
I was about to say it's strictly a change in pop culture, in my opinion. And to go back to what you're saying about LeBron, it's like that LeBron shoe. It looks good and it's great for LeBron, and he can wear it, but it's not necessarily styled in a way that the average guy can wear it, off of the court. And I think that's something that goes back to a lot of basketball designs now. And I give them credit because they're built with performance in mind, as they most definitely should be. But then when you think about style, it's like those styles don't necessarily translate to off the court. So they kind of, nobody's interested in for off the court wear. And I think one of the bigger things is like that, definitely that shift in pop culture. Like athletes aren't necessarily driving styles like they used to. Now kids are looking to, musicians. They're looking to Instagram influencers. They're reading, when I was a kid and even, growing up all the way through the 90s, early 2000s, we were looking at magazines that came out like once a month, where these kids are hammered, and young people nowadays are hammered with images and media constantly. And they're just more influenced by that than they are the athletes on the court. And even if you look at the athletes on the court, it's not so much, if you think about what's paid the most attention to in terms of like their footwear, is not what they're wearing on the court, is what they're wearing to the game, that pregame fit. And the camera's catching what they're wearing before the game. And when you catch them before the game, they're wearing the latest hype shoe, or they're wearing some designer stuff, and they've got the cool outfit. Like, and that stuff translates more to a kid than, LeBron 18 on court.
Gotcha. I was wondering, next question would be, say I'm interested in a particular like limited edition sneaker. Like the couple weeks ago, I saw a limited edition. I think it was like Adidas Elf signature shoe came out. That's something that would be like a hit with my kids. And honestly, I think would be something I'd be interested in wearing. What's your advice in terms of like approaching a limited edition sneaker like that?
Oh man, the best I can tell you is to pray a lot and don't get your hopes too tied into that limited edition sneaker. Is all I can tell you is the best thing. Now, to be honest with you, I always tell people it's like it's still at the end of the day, like you can try online, of course, and I'm talking out of the context of COVID and of course the pandemic and quarantine and everything. You still have to kind of go in stores and make relationships with people. And that's ultimately what shoes are about in a larger sense to me. It's not so much the shoe. It's not so much the shoe. It's like the stories associated with them and the stories associated with it in the quest of acquiring a shoe, and like the people you encounter as you're trying to acquire shoes. So like that guy who's your buddy who works at the store, and it gives you the heads up, like, hey, we're releasing these Saturday at 11. Make sure you're here. Like you and
Ah,
that guy develop a rapport, a relationship,
mm-hmm.
and that's somebody who you end up talking to over the years, and y'all become friends. Shoes or no shoes, shoes or no shoes involved at all. So like it's more about making those relationships and just talking to people and just getting out there, in my opinion.
Gotcha.
So, John, to that point, I have a buddy, and he's really into sneaker culture. And one of the things that he's most concerned about is just the reseller market and bots kind of destroying sneaker culture. And he's been having difficulty kind of getting the sneakers that he wants. I mean, we live in Albuquerque, New Mexico, so it's kind of like a not a major media market per se. So I think through his just frustration getting the sneakers that he wants. In this area, it's kind of pretty difficult. So is it a thing with him that he's not cultivating the right relationships, or do you think it is something to which, like, this reseller market and these bots are really providing a lot of roadblocks for people that really want these sneakers?
No, I mean there's definitely roadblocks without a doubt, and I think that when you think of, I've got a friend who's into gaming, and now everybody and parents especially are having to contend with trying to get their hands on a PlayStation and an Xbox right now. And of course, bots are buying those up quickly. And my
That's
friend was
right.
complaining about it. Yeah, and I'm like, he was complaining about it, like he couldn't get it, and then when he wanted to buy it on the secondary market, it's going upwards of $1,000. And I was like, yo, welcome to what we've been dealing with in shoes for the past 5 to 7 years. Like it is a headache, it is a hurdle. And he was showing me the other day where even lawmakers now are starting to have that conversation about, hey, we have to do something about this, about these unfair practices, buying practices, I guess you would say. But it's something that's been going on with shoes for a long time. I think if you look at the concert industry, like the music industry, they've had to deal with people using bots and whatever to try to get tickets and scalp tickets. Um, it's really unfortunate. And I think it's something that, on one hand, you talk about lawmakers have to kind of do something about it. And then on the flip side, it also comes back to the companies, like making enough of an item for there to be enough for everybody to get it, everybody who wants it to get it. Like, I think it falls back on those sneaker companies to like up those production numbers to make sure everybody has access. But at the same time, it's like they know they want that supply and demand to work a certain way so that the demand always stays high and people want their products and that their products are always in conversation. So I don't know if there's any end in sight, to be quite honest with you.
Well, I think that's a really good point you bring up with the video games. I just remember like the Nintendo Wii, Nintendo like intentionally made less of them to keep that demand up, and it was a craze for years to come, even though they had the capability of making tons of these systems. And I think with video games, at least, like, it may not be the right thing to do, but there's piracy. So if you ultimately want to play like your favorite games, you can. You have to go through a lot of hoops and loops to do that. But with sneakers, there's not, other than maybe like bootlegs, maybe. I'm not really sure, but I guess I wanted to ask you in terms of like a beginner trying to get into sneaker culture. Jock Slade said that you can just kind of pick any sneaker and then go from there. But with me, I saw the Kobe Bruce Lee collaboration, and I think the shoes were like
Amazing shoes.
they look
Amazing
spectacular, and
shoes.
yeah, and they were trending on Twitter, and then they were sold out. So like somebody like me, I know nothing about cultivating relationships or like where to go, and then they're gone. And then like you were saying, there's the reseller market, which they're being sold like 3 times, 4 times that much. What would you say to like a newbie like myself who's trying to get into it? Is it kind of a bad time to really start, or should I just kind of just put my feet in the deep end and just try to get the shoes that I want?
I always tell people to like buy what you like, and then also, like, if you're going for that hype product and it's like you want that, you got to know the waters that you're entering into. So for me, I always say buy what you like, and like don't buy what everybody else is buying or what everybody tells you is cool. If you like it, and you know it comes down to personal style. It's like if you like it, buy it, wear it, make it look cool, because that's what it was pre-internet. Like you bought stuff and you wore it, and even like when you were younger, it's like you bought stuff and you took what your parents gave you, those few pairs that they could get you a year, and you wore them and you styled them in a way that made it look cool. So instead of trying to buy some cool stuff, like trying to buy those Bruce Leroy's, yeah, you can Bruce Lee's, excuse me, you could do it. You could spend that $300-400, or I can go out here and find anywhere from 4 to 8 shoes that cost half of that. $100 a pop, $75 a pop, and I've got a decent little collection going, and I've got a lot of variety and style right there. So I always encourage people to like, yo, go off the beaten path just a little bit and like find other stuff that everybody else isn't searching for. Like find those hidden gems and make the most of it.
John, I've got one more question for you, and then Justin, if you have another, go for it. But I was wondering your thoughts on, one of the things that we've seen through the 2010s, that's been a new recent trend is just kind of like pop culture icons. I mean, specifically musicians getting shoe deals. So shoe deals have expanded beyond athletes, and I think obviously, hip hop blends really well with NBA and therefore sneaker culture. Could you see more and more people in the future getting shoe deals like beyond the music industry and obviously athletics? Or do you think that maybe we're kind of reaching towards I don't know, I guess maybe like a pop culture shoe deal kind of ceiling with what we've seen in the 2010s?
I've been around shoes in the online space specifically and in the resale space since maybe 2001. And since maybe 2007, there's been this constant refrain that the bubble's going to pop, like it can't get much bigger. And the bubble just keeps growing and expanding.
Mm-hmm.
Like it still hasn't popped. 13 years later, the bubble hasn't popped. So I tend to think that it's going to just keep getting bigger. And one of the things that I'm seeing, and I'll just say this, I think basketball shoes right now may be a little bit too predictable, but I think one of the most potentially one of the most exciting things on the horizon is the fact that Kanye West has a Yeezy basketball silhouette that's coming out. And it's very much one of those shoes, like what we're talking about, that you could wear it on the court, but it also looks good styled off of the court, which is like a rarity for basketball shoes currently. Mm-hmm. So I think if Kanye's, and my personal feelings about, the many different sides of Kanye aside, just talking about the product itself, it's a beautifully designed product. I haven't tested it, and you haven't seen any true reviews of it because it was only released, I think last All-Star weekend was the only time the actual on-court model was released. There's an on-court model releasing, I think, on the 24th for the first time, I believe. So, like, if that shoe performs, and we know it's going to do good from a style perspective, like that could be one of the brightest spots in basketball footwear to come. And then footwear in general, when you're talking about it, like you're seeing, and it's not just footwear, we're noticing with apparel as well, they're starting to enter the gaming space. So not only do you have musicians starting to get these deals and getting these products and things named after them, you're starting to get these gamers and game teams and people who have, huge Twitch channels and DJs and everything else starting to get, those looks from Nike, Adidas, etc. Mitchell and Ness just did a capsule collection. I just say this because I randomly saw it the other day. that did an apparel collection around some gaming team. And we know Mitchell and Ness were making retro jerseys, basketball jerseys, football jerseys, baseball jerseys. They're doing apparel around gaming because everybody understands that that's a huge market. And unlike sports, it's like I don't have to be athletically inclined, or I don't have to be so much better than everybody else in a physical sense in order to be good at a video game. And being good at a video game, in my estimation, is like, everybody has potential to be good at that. And so that may draw more people than even sports does before this thing is over with. And so it's only going to get bigger.
And do you think in the future, if it keeps moving in that direction in terms of other forms of entertainment being offered these sneaker deals, I always point out, like I'm just a big pro wrestling fan, and a lot of the athletes there, they constantly talk about sneakers. Even Kofi Kingston he has a custom sneaker designer who designs sneakers for every one of his matches consistently. So it's just becoming a bigger crossover where a lot of the performers there, they're not wearing wrestling boots, they're wearing sneakers. Do you?
Who sells a lot of shoes, and always sells through on his products?
Yeah,
is The Rock for Under Armour.
Oh, that's right. Yep.
He sells through every single time on his apparel collections and footwear. And that's another one of those things. Is like he's got a following, and people love wrestling, just like they love gaming and love basketball. Like they love wrestling. They have to wear shoes. They have to wear clothes. So why not wear The Rock's clothes? I guess like they enjoy it, or a lot of them are wrestling, gym goers, etc. But so it's just the sense that they want to wear the stuff that represents who they are, like we all do. Like we want to wear the things that let people know who we are and what we're about.
For sure. And to that point, do you see like the athletes, in particularly like in the NBA, becoming maybe not irrelevant, but certainly less of a focus? So a focus on all these other genres of pop culture, where just people are looking to the people they look up to, in particularly in gaming and entertainment and et cetera, more than people on the basketball court, where that was the norm for so many years.
Oh, I don't think they'll ever be irrelevant, and that's because as part of our culture, as part of American culture, sports are taught to us as kids, and those are usually the first people who we look up to as heroes or idols, outside of say our parents or our grandparents or whoever. Like those are the first people who we begin to idolize and want to emulate. So I think when you kind of approach it from that angle, a lot of times, I always think that athletes still will always be a huge part of our culture because they've always been for as long as I can remember. And I don't see that changing anytime soon. I hope it doesn't.
Well, John, this is a fascinating topic. Thank you for joining us. Please plug what you're working on, and then where can our listeners find you on social media?
I am working on absolutely nothing. And I say that because I've had a grueling, just like everybody else, I've had a grueling 2020. I've got a couple of weeks off of work. I'm going to relax, but 9 times out of 10, you can find me publishing something with Complex Sneakers, that vertical there that specializes in sneakers and the trends associated with sneakers. And on Instagram and Twitter, you can find me at John Gotty, and that's Gotty. So I'm usually there, making jokes, sharing thoughts, just like everybody else. I'm a fan. I'm a fan of Coach. I'm a fan of shoes, basketball, the whole 9 yards. So catch me there.
Awesome, John. Thank you very much for your time. Really appreciate it.
All right. Thank you guys so much.
Yeah. Thank you, John.
Yes, sir.